What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering. I talked a little bit about yesterday an ongoing back and forth around the show, The Boys. Many people generally agree that, hey, The Boys was a good show, an okay show that kind of leaned left for a little while. Then season four came around, and even the leftists who agreed with the politics that were in the show were saying, hey, it's a little ham fisted and lazy. And when the left is saying that, you know, the people that don't like a lot of woke ideology in their shows have been seeing it for years. It really is the culmination of a bunch of lazy writing. I mean, I think a point can be made without one-to-one real-world political comparisons, which the boys literally stoops to. And again, if you like the show, you should be able to like the show. This is just one aspect of it. Many people believe that it got lazy with its politics in season four. And now there's a huge pushback after the showrunner has responded. The showrunner has made comments, a massive leftist hypocrisy, a woke hypocrisy. The short version of it is, now the left is even writing articles. BuzzFeed and Rolling Stone, they're even writing articles, which is, hey, you know what? It should be commended, actually. They actually are not saying, the far right is upset about a funny scene. No, they're actually in agreement with it. The Boys is a show that has, in several cases, courted a lot of controversy. It has a lot of shock value in it. That's part of the show. There was a particular scene this season that I talked about where a male character is basically trapped in a dungeon, a boudoir dungeon, a spicy dungeon. But he's a different man impersonating that superhero because they're wearing a suit, and so he doesn't know a safe word. So these people continue to do things to him against his will. And there's even a point where people are trying to say, "Oh, it was all consensual," blah 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 blah. Well, there's a point where the bad guys take his mask off, realize it's not the right person, and then continue to do terrible things to him, including apparently at one point cutting a hole in his stomach with plans to, do that with it. So a lot of people are saying, it's just, it's a goof, it's a gaffe. I'm not necessarily offended by it. What I'm offended by is the absurd double standard, because in season one, a similar situation happened to a female character, and the showrunner was out there talking about how he was talking to so many women, and he really wanted to get it right, and it was so serious and so important. But when it was a man, he literally called it hilarious. And you're starting to see a lot of these articles coming out where people are saying like, yo, dude, that's a clear double standard, but that the left wouldn't have any standards at all if they didn't have double standards. This via giant freaking robot 5 hours ago, as things are starting to heat up now. The Boys is a TV show that has often courted controversy thanks to, its bizarre, spicy content. Season 4 certainly had plenty of the latter, including an extremely uncomfortable scene of Huey having things done to him by his former childhood hero. That would have been bad enough, but the Boys showrunner Eric Kripke admitted that he and his other crew members found Huey's plight as hilarious, which many fans have deemed hypocritical since the showrunner was so careful and respectful about portraying the same situation when it happened to a woman in season 1. To explain how the Boys caused so much controversy in the most recent season, we need to return to season 1. This season featured Starlight as a newcomer to the Seven, but the shine of her new gig wears off once her childhood hero, the Deep, does something terrible to her. It's extremely hard to watch and listen to the show, and to listen to the show's creator was also very hard to film. The Boys creator Eric Kripke knew how much controversy the scene would cause, and he wanted to get it right. The goalie realized having a lot of conversations with women, in which he tried to get the F out of the way and just let them speak. He knew the stakes were impossibly high, because if he got it wrong, it would just fail as a scene, but it would also be hurtful. In retrospect, he said he did all the right things and functionally pulled off the impossible. using the boys to tell a relatively respectful and insightful casting couch style story while minimizing potential controversy. Unfortunately, that seems to have completely gone out the window a few years later. In a recent interview, Kripke was asked point blank about the decision to torment Huey, a man, by having him endure terrible things from his childhood hero so shortly after his dad passed away. An incredulous Kripke said, "Well, that's a dark way to look at it," and claimed, "We view it as hilarious." Certainly, what happened to the man in season 4 is played for laughs, but the controversy stirred by Kripke's comments means that nobody in the fandom is laughing. The circumstances Starlight and Huey face in the show are broadly very similar. They are each very young, and bad things happen to them from a superhero they once admired. In one case, the woman, it's a serious scene that he absolutely had to get right. In the other case, it's a man, and it's hilarious by his own definition. It doesn't help that many fans think the most recent season of The Boys has been going through the motions. So the last thing it needs is a major controversy tearing apart the fandom. Sadly, Kripke's comments are not only dividing the fans, but also making it seem like he's completely insincere when describing how he agonized over the portrayal of the situation when it happened to a woman. Then you can look at some of the left-wing media outlets out there. You can see BuzzFeed News even, leftoid news outlet saying people are seriously outraged after The Boys showrunner Eric Kripke dismissed a brutal thing that happened to a male character. Back in 2019, we know The Boys was new, blah, blah, blah. In the 4th season, the show premiered last month, and the most recent episode that has now come under fire for a shock value essay scene that showrunner Eric Kripke dismissed as, quote, hilarious. We already know, we talked about yesterday what happened in the episode. While the real web weaver had obviously consented to the situation and been told a safe word in advance of his audition for when it all got too much, Huey did not consent to the incident and is also unable to stop it because he had switched suits. Notably, once Tech, their Batman guy, discovers that it actually is Huey and doesn't know the safe word, who is wearing Web Weaver's costume, he continues to do terrible things to him. He puts a clamp in his mouth before almost, putting a hole in his stomach so that he could enjoy it. Okay? Huey is ultimately rescued by his friend. In the final scene of the episode, shows him crying while Annie, played by Erin Moriarty, cradles him. However, it's widely suggested that he is mostly emotional over the recent passing of his father, not what he had just endured. Needless to say, viewers were horrified and disturbed by the scene when Eric downplayed its severity in a subsequent interview with Variety. Let's start with the Tech Night dungeon part. Where did this idea come from? We talked about this. He said it was hilarious. Then the notion came up as he should have a Batcave, but let's be honest, the Batcave would obviously be a hookup dungeon, the showrunner continued. Like, even the real Batcave is just a side of being a hookup dungeon. It's really dark. There are rubber suits everywhere. It's not that much of a push to add a couple of dildos and a weird urinal that turns into a face mask. I mean, it isn't when you're a degenerate and all you think about are degenerate things all day. A lot of these shows are run by actual gross people, actual degenerates who, live out their own weird fantasies through the show's characters. Part of that is, of course, humiliating characters that are once beloved. They get off on that because they stick it to the people that were mean to them in high school and said they were never going to be anything or whatever it is they might think. In the comics, there's a great storyline where Huey goes undercover disguised as a superhero. Eric went on, and the story was Jack always had asked us to do the part, so part of it, blah, 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 blah. Elsewhere in the interview, Eric added, I love that it's just such a perfect setup that he doesn't even know his own safe word. It's like a beautiful comedy setup that he's trying to find it the whole time. Fans reacted to Eric's quotes on a Reddit forum, and one popular comment reads, I'm no expert, but what the F? I don't even think the interviewer was asking this gotcha moment. I have to assume that they didn't think Kripke would find it hilarious because it was so harrowing and hard to watch. What a disturbing answer to a very valid question. Sorry, but what's funny about SA? Another user asked, somebody wrote, how is Kripke so out of touch that he missed the point of his own scene? It's mind-boggling. His answer is awful and toxic. When you again, I don't think this is a left or right issue. I think this is a hypocrisy issue, but it's also an issue of like, these are the people that you courted, bro. And like, you can look in this Reddit here, it's read, yeah, it's safe to say that nobody behind the scenes was taking this seriously at all, which again is in sharp contrast to how they treated the scene, with men. You say, I, like many others, found the scene very disturbing, so I was curious what people had to say about it in the bonus video, and unfortunately, this is what I found. So everyone I know is talking about this, but I haven't seen the clip posted yet.
And Colby gives a world-class comedic performance. Legit is one of the funniest.
Oh, it's just so funny, yeah.
What? Period.
Get out of here.
Your tickle scene with him is one of the craziest things we've ever done, and one of the funniest.
That's very nice.
It's so funny. Everything's funny, but again, I'm not offended by it. It's a fake show with fake characters. But what I am offended by is that this clown trotted out the same old, oh, I respect women, and it was so important for me to portray this terrible thing when it happens to women. But when it happens to men, it's a hilarious setup that just can't possibly be ignored. You can see they have updated the article. You can watch the show's creator and some of the cast joking around about the scene in the most bizarre way right here. It's like it never occurred to them that they were all making the scene that it was, when they were making the scene that it was essay, just wow. A lot of people are jumping through hoops to defend the scene. One common defense I've read is Huey knowingly put himself in that situation so he consents. Another is that because both Tech Knight and Ashley thought it was Webweaver, they believed it was non-consensual. That may be the case, but I don't think this changes with regards to what happened to Huey, who definitely didn't plan in engaging in these type of activities, all when he was disguised as the Super Spider-Man, sorry. Another thing I wanted to comment is just how tiresome it all gets that every single soup is a deviant and not in the way that's even relevant to their character or powers. At least earlier on in the show, the writers tried to make it make sense. Translucent was a peeping Tom for existence because he could turn invisible. The Deep is into sea creatures. Now the show just wants to up the ante over and over again. There's this sense of desperation to it, which is kind of sad. It's also kind of sad that Huey wasn't even given an episode to grieve his father's incredibly tragic passing, and instead he gets thrown into this gross scene for the laughs. Finally, I have one question. Has the season advanced the plot in any meaningful way? Gen 5 introduced soup-ending virus, but the boys have barely moved the story forward at all. It's just wheel spinning and shock value and nothing else. Everyone's basically done with the show, and I'm not surprised. The whole reaction is hypocritical and gross, and the show is just not for me. If you enjoy it, that's okay. I'm not saying it's the worst thing on the planet. It's more the hypocrisy that, I find a little annoying that's on display. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.